Well, Nancy, no doubt this is going to go down as one of the most remarkable pieces of political theater, at least in modern American history. And I think what's going to be really interesting over the next 48 to 72 hours as the president gets back on U.S. soil is to see what happens even within his own party. Already we've heard so much pushback, not just from Democrats, also from Republicans and also from members of his own intelligence team. Let's take a look at what Dan Coates, the director of national intelligence, had to say following this press conference. He said the role of the intelligence community is to provide the best information, fact-based assessments possible for the president and policymakers. Now, we've been clear in our assessments of Russia's meddling in the 2016 election and their ongoing pervasive efforts to undermine our democracy. We'll continue to provide an unvarnished and objective intelligence in support of our national security. Now, of course, that's just one member of the president's intelligence team. We heard from former members of the intelligence community as well over the last 24 hours. Certainly, it's been a chance for folks who are on both sides of the aisle to weigh in here. Certainly, we've heard from John Brennan. He said this was nothing short of treasonous, what the president did, appearing to side with President Putin versus his own intelligence team. Also, of course, other things on the agenda. We didn't even really get to Syria. We didn't hear that much about Crimea. And when he was given the opportunity to really list what were the grievances with the Russians, the president really didn't have that much to say, Nancy.
Yes, Hadley, there were some suggestions they would work together on the situation in Syria, but not too much in terms of the substance of what that path looked like going forward. But on this issue of election meddling, you talk about the fact that we've already heard swift condemnation coming from within the president's own party. Let's take a look here at what Senator John McCain had to say. Sure, he has been critical of the president in the past, but some very strong words coming from John McCain. If we can pull up first what he said on Twitter here. He said today's press conference in Helsinki was one of the most disgraceful performances by an American president in memory. He then goes on with an official statement to say not only did he really give this away, but they seem to be speaking from the same script, referring to President Trump and President Putin. And McCain certainly not the only one in his criticism about that press conference.
Absolutely, Nancy. And I think if you look at this, you take a step back and look at this in terms of what this means, not just for America's foreign policy, but also what this means for the Republican Party. I mean, you have a party that's traditionally been hawkish on defense, hawkish on national security. Certainly when it comes to the Russians, this post-communist narrative that we heard from Ronald Reagan really setting the tone for the last several decades in terms of what moderate Republicans, or what we would call the modern Republican Party, seems to think. And it's going to certainly be interesting as we move forward and certainly into these midterm elections. So much of that base of support is going for and supporting Mr. Trump's policies, whether or not a lot of these incumbents are going to face a backlash on their comments here, because we even heard from Paul Ryan as well talking about whether Russia was or was not an enemy of the United States or a foe of the United States. I think that's going to be really interesting to watch as well. Now, I do want to bring in a bit of sound from the former American ambassador to Ukraine. Let's listen in.
It was not a good summit. It was even an embarrassing performance by President Trump. Not only did he take at face value President Putin's denial of election interference, and he took that over the judgment of his own intelligence community, but he didn't criticize Russian aggression towards Ukraine. When asked specifically, is there anything for which you hold Russia responsible for the downturn in U.S.-Russia relations, he didn't name a single issue.
Now, of course, if we've learned anything, Nancy, from watching the president at his NATO meetings and then later in the UK and now this incredible press conference here in Helsinki with the Russian president, if we've learned anything at all, it's to expect the unexpected. So certainly when we look at this over the next 24 to 48 hours, I think we could see some new developments. And I think the one thing that we can say for certain is that the president is not immune to creating his own reality. So if he feels that this has been a press conference that gained ground for the United States, that's certainly what he's going to be saying back at home. Hey everybody, it's Hadley Gamble from our new CNBC Middle East Bureau in Abu Dhabi. Thanks for stopping by. Now, to watch more, you can try one of the videos that just popped up on your screen. And don't forget to subscribe.